This is Pooja Mohan, as Mehli introduced me. So I was part of Schneider Electric as a global HR director, heading one of the businesses. And apparently, when I was heading the businesses, one of the businesses was Eurotherm, and this recently got divested from Schneider Electric, and they have requested me to work as part of the acquisition, and I have recently moved to support Eurotherm and Watlow integration. So that's why you would see there are multiple company names coming in and kicking in. And Work Human, thank you for setting up this, is not new to me, because as part of Schneider, we've been, working with Work Human as a recognition platform. So very comfortable in knowing Work Human for that matter. So I'm located in London, UK, but I've been working in different countries for most of the Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies. So it's going to be a pleasure for the next few minutes to showcase one of the case studies as part of the Wellbeing leader that I had to manage, which had about close to 40,000 employees as part of Schneider Electric. And I was made as a Wellbeing leader during the tough time, which was 2021, which was immediately after the COVID, or rather the COVID year, right? So it was very challenging, but I wanted to show the case study is basically how we won. This is a case study which we won as part of the SHRM award in 2022 for the work done in 2021. And this is a very prestigious global award for Schneider Electric, which we pulled almost after 6-7 years. And hence this was a very important sort of an award. So what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is take you through, what were some of the things that I presented to the jury, so that, it could be a learning experience. With the first slide, I'm going to do the check-in, which our previous presenter was talking about. So we heard on the check-in, so I thought I'll just do the first check-in because I cannot move without doing a check-in. So would you like to put it on the chat box there on your right hand side to let me know what sort of audience that I'm targeting today? How do you feel today? You can pick up the expression from the emojis there. Do you feel happy, silly, hopeful, excited, grateful? We heard about grateful. Can you put it on the chat? What do you feel today? All right. Karina says happy. Alina is grateful. Isabel is curious. Michelle is happy. Paul is fantastic. Awesome. Super. So get that going. Thank you very much. So I see a lot of happy and hopeful and grateful people that I'm going to address today. Amazing. So with that, what you see, I just want to start with the objective. As part of Schneider Electric, well-being was not something which was started now, but it was something which was established in 2012. So it's been as an objective as part of the HR strategy for many, many years. And we continue to focus on the 4 pillars that you see. And one of the things which we have recently included is a bit on the financial aspect, but the 4 continues to be core as part of the well-being strategy that we have year on year. And what you see on the left-hand side as a donut is what the HR strategy is, because all our strategy aligns to high-performing culture, well-being, leadership, D&I, learning, and talent, which means well-being plays a very critical part of the HR strategy. And what you see as 4 quadrant is, while I will not talk and get into the details, but just wanted to, bring in, showcase some of the initiatives that we drive. Some could be local and some could be, more global as well. So these are, 4 quadrants and some of the initiatives that we run. So just to give you an idea, what was the 2021 strategy? Because, it was a COVID year, as I said, and we were one of those organizations who pulled the strings really, really quick. And when I say that, we decided to go as a permanent hybrid organization. This is a communication that we did in 2021 Q1, and we were very clear as a global organization. While we have a manufacturing, which is a GSC, and that we had to deal with it very separately. So what we said is, we said to empower people, it's very important that the strategy for 2021 is going to be mental health. We did a lot of work on mindfulness, and very importantly on the behavior, because it's going to be new ways of working. So how do you really enable and prepare our leaders and the people right to the bottom of the organization to be really ready with the new ways of working, right? So that was a lot of focus that we pulled in 2021. And some of the very important enabling factor as an environment, we completely revamped and looked at global flexibility work policy, global family leave policy, and very importantly, the workplace of the future. And that's an ongoing work. And we have transformed tremendously from 2021 to 2023. Within the 2 years, there's been a lot of work and focus on the workplace of the future. So this is the strategy that we had in 2021. With that, what are some of the initiatives that we drove in 2021, knowing that the COVID was hit, and everybody was actually working pretty much remote, not even hybrid, right? But still, what were some of the initiatives that we really looked at and pulled? Was as part of the new ways of working, the immediate first thing is we did a playbook where we ensured it is all animated, and very importantly, how to we heard from the previous speaker about the trust. So how do you really, as a leader, showcase that you're trustable, because it's all remote, we're not used to some of these. So some of these, how do you empower people, how do you enable people in a virtual environment? All of this were animated. The global policy is something that we clarified, and we made it more suitable in the scenario of 2021. We ensured globally, we had about 625 people managers who were the mental well-being aiders, and we always keep the people managers as the front end, and we enabled them to really identify when you're actually working in a virtual setup, when you're actually talking to them over a phone, how do you really you know enable the people managers to be prepared and identify some of those signals, right? The power of check-ins, we heard it, and I truly believe in it as well. So what you saw today is one way of power check-in, but there are different ways that we use form polls, form score polls, and multiple ways of doing check-ins, and so on. So I'll not go one by one because we've got very important slides to cover. And very importantly, we had Wellbeing Labs. This was very, very popular, which means this is more a community, and where we brought in the like-minded people coming together, which means they had things to do which are more meaningful, and they had a purpose. For an example, mindful practices was not done by somebody external. This was done by employees, where 30 minutes weekly people participate, and this was ongoing, not just from 2021. This was happening even 3 years before, because I told you that the as a well-being, we established a lot of things from 2012. So it was actually very easy for us to pull up and get it more from a mindset and a maturity standpoint. It was very easy for us to cope up during the COVID time. So we had some of the community work, which had some very meaningful work during the time. And we also showcased to the jury about a little bit on what we did during the crisis management as part of the COVID. So I'm sure a lot of companies did pretty much similar, but just to call out, there was a lot of solidarity. And the best thing that I would say is, I cannot remember Schneider reduced any manpower even during the COVID time, because we took a lot of initiatives as a part of solidarity. And we, in fact, even the contractors, we went and supported contractors as part of well-being and things like that, and we ensured nobody's actually losing their job. And what you see here is the EVP of Schneider, which is meaningful, empowered, and inclusive. And everything that we do as part of our strategy is all tied up to the EVP that we work on. So what you see even as part of well-being is what are some of the things that we did more meaningful? For example, medical claims, how it got reduced as part of some of our initiatives. How did the awareness got increased? It actually increased by 3x, and we have a separate metrics function within the well-being who go through some of these data, crunches the data, and gives us these metrics so that it becomes very meaningful for us, and we're not doing initiatives just as a checkbox exercise. So that's just to call out some of it. Our medical incident rates, which got reduced from 0.33 to zero point 0.7. We saw 80%, 81% of the people felt in our survey that it's an organization with a lot of flexibility. People are empowered, and we had 96% of the women employees returning post the maternity. And in fact, recently, if I'm not wrong, this has increased to 97. So these are some of the specific call outs in terms of the measures that we did as part of the AVP. Sorry, I think very importantly that I want to call out on inclusivity is we did not just look at our employees, but we also went to an extent where we want to support our channel partners there, and then our employees, family members, the channel partners, family members, and then we went to our community where Schneider was actually located in, and we went and supported and treated during COVID in our communities where the offices were. So that's how we truly believed it is more inclusive in the way we approached, and it was not just focusing on our employees. For an example, I'm not sure if anybody in the call is from India, because they will be able to resonate this a lot more during the COVID time, where people did not have beds to go get themselves admitted. Even if they want to get vaccinated, the hospitals did not have vaccinations. So as an organization, we have to be more responsible to see how do we not only help the employees, but also go beyond and look at our community channel partners, their families, and all of this was definitely a mammoth task. So some of the key things which actually got to the attention of the juries were because they were specifically asking, when you're presenting, we want some very key, metrics that's more impactful, right? So what we saw, what is that we actually saw and truly believed and showcased to the jury, which happened significantly, is the employee engagement index from 2019 and end of 2021. It got increased by 7%. And very importantly, especially in the manufacturing, where we have a huge presence across globally, right? Not just in specific countries, but globally, we have a huge presence on the manufacturing. One of the key metrics were the waste recovery ratio, which means any non-hazardous waste, we ensure that how much goes to the land. And what we came out is, and this is a measure which goes as part of the EHS, which is the environmental health and safety, and we improved from 98 to 99% specifically during the COVID year because of the additional measures that we had to take of the virus getting spread across. Mental health, because we did a lot of awareness specifically, surprisingly, the EAP report that we got was significantly higher, which clearly indicated 100%. And very importantly, how is it all translating to business, right? And we saw record performance in revenue, which was plus 24% organization wide. And very importantly, the organization health, the risk, which is something that we assess, and the health risk score got low from in the scale of 1 to 10 at 1.8, and which is a very critical score for us. And this is probably the last slide that I have, because as an organization, it's truly important for us to see whatever that we do, how do we make it more sustainable? And Schneider as an organization has actually won, which is one of the world most sustainable company and top 100 companies in the world. So knowing that everything that we do has to be sustainable, and that goes with well-being as well. So these are some of the things which we thought could be more sustainable and more from a scalability standpoint. So for an example, I, along with some of my champions, we represent in the World Economic Forum as a cross-industry leadership. What you see on the right hand side corner is, in fact, we built while you see a digital watch and all of that stuff, it's nothing to do just with the fitness, but it's a very robust well-being platform where we have partnered with a couple of vendors, and we had some APIs, and that's very robust and I mean, sort of enjoyed by the employees. And what you see on the bottommost left is, as part of the mandatory trainings, we've also included mental health, which was to be included in 2022. Now it's already been included, and it's a mandatory training. And we took almost, if I'm not wrong, close to 8 to 10 months to develop, because some of this could be very different from country to country, and the sentiment and the way you approach could be different. So we had to really put our acts together to see how do we make this as a global, because it has to be global. And this was well thought through, and we made this as a mandatory learning session right now as part of our essentials. And very importantly, from a sustainable standpoint, we have a well-being boot camp. This is specifically for the people manager, and this is very comprehensive and well designed, sort of a well designed tool. And we don't believe in just having sessions just for 1 or 2 hours, call them, do a session, and then you finish it off. No, we always believe more ongoing sort of learning. And this is, in that sort of a thought process, this is well thought through. And we have a boot camp which happens year on year, and that's throughout the year, where we touch the employees, specifically the people managers, to go through from a well-being standpoint. So that's more from a sustainability standpoint, some of the initiatives that we covered. And this is 2021, which was presented in end of 2021 and awarded in 2022. But obviously, there are various changes that, or not changes, we have enhanced and made it a lot more sharper in some of our deliverables. Yeah, with that, back to Mehli. With the time constraint, I thought I will try, and I'm not sure if I'm on time. And
you have plenty of time, so we certainly have time for questions and answers. So, ladies, thank you so much, Pooja. That was a really fascinating story and very interesting journey. It's certainly not about what happened in the pandemic, but you way earlier. You recognize since 2012, as you said, it's been consciously developed. And while we're waiting for some questions to come in, while as a story it sounds very compelling, but it certainly was not a walk in the park. So what were some of the challenges along the way that you encountered?
Yeah. So when you do want to bring some of these, from a Schneider as an organization, it's a very complex in its own setup, right? So it cannot be just done because you think it is right. So there's a lot of alignment, buy-in that you need to get within your leadership. So that was a bit of challenge because leaders was not able to think ahead on some of the points that we have to bring in. While they were kept on saying there were a lot of challenges, but it was not very easy. I mean, very easy to bring some of these in a true sense, or to make it in reality. So, and especially for an example, if you're sitting in India and you wanted to make these changes in the UK, there were again changes. For an example, there were a lot of going in India, but some of these alignment has to happen with a legal person who's sitting in France, right? Because if I have to do the vaccination, and that's not acceptable by Schneider, because Schneider said no, we would not do any vaccination. But I will have to make a point to the guy who's sitting in France as part of the legal team, who's making the decision, who reports to the CEO of the company, and say, no, look, I understand globally we have made that stance, but the situation in India is very different, and I have to make a case, build a case. And yes, then they truly understood, okay, this is very different and unique, and we cannot apply the same rule for all the organizations. So that made an open, not only for India, and after that, even for few other countries, they made an exception, and they brought it. So always there are certain challenges, but it's very important that you fight for the right thing and you build a business case, And very importantly, leaders are open. It's not that they come with a rigid thought process. They're absolutely open. And because we're working on a crisis sometimes, right? We don't have a playbook already to say, okay, these are the things, and we make a decision. So, and that was a really quick turnover. I think within few days we made that decision, and then they said, okay, let's go ahead and do this from a vaccination standpoint. So, yeah. So, how do you maneuver and go through some of these with your leadership? Will always be a challenge when you're wanting to do something beyond from a well-being standpoint, and that satisfaction is just a tremendous satisfaction. Just imagine when we touched so many lives as part of vaccination.
Yeah.
People are, there is a lot of connect that people are able to think today, and that's a great has been a, I mean, we did not do that for a retention. We did purely from a humanitarian standpoint, a true citizen, that we need to step up and help our employees and the other stakeholders. And today people look back and say, it was so amazing how Schneider as an organization stood for us during the tough time.
It is. That's really critical, to make sure that your values are compromised when things get tough and going gets tough. Certainly, some of the questions coming in, and it certainly resonates very well to the previous conversation I had with Lynette about the role of managers, and both Suzanne and Severin asking about, could you expand a little bit on a bootcamp for people managers toolkit? Could you share some standard content, agenda for wellbeing bootcamps and managers for managers? So some of the concrete ideas about the bootcamp for people managers is certainly an important question for the audience.
Yeah, so if possible, I'll try and put the content when I'm sharing the deck with you, Mihali, so that you could actually share it to the larger audience as well.
Yeah, happy to
I'm happy to put all the contents, but I'm just trying to recollect in top of my mind, because I designed this in 2021, and frankly, it's been 2 years. I did not go back and look at it, but the boot camp, if I recollect. So what happens is, there is always organization, we will have plethora of things, but a lot of times people manager miss to understand. They would come up and ask, oh, is there such a facility in the organization? Oh, I never knew about it. So a lot of the times we have a lot of things, but the unfortunate part is people don't, especially people managers, don't realize there is something in the organization. So one of the key things as part of this well-being is, we took a pit stop and said, look, let's make complete awareness of what is first available. So we did the basket, we cataloged what is there in house, and we made complete awareness of people. For an example, it was such a shame that we had EAP as a services for many years in the organization, and people managers will ask stupid questions sometimes. So even for this, can I reach to EAP? So they weren't aware that there is nothing stopping you. So for an example, they did not know that they were, the husband and wife had an issue, and then there was some complications, and the employee had to go through some mental trauma. So the employee did not feel it is right to go and talk to an employee, to the EAP provider. So we have to say, look, EAP is for everything. So so the point that I'm trying to make is, the boot camp, I'll try and put as part of my deck what are some of the contents that we covered, but the fundamental idea behind the bootcamp is, how do we make the people managers completely aware what's there in the organization for the people first. So we went area by area. Like for an example, the EAP was one of the top area that we wanted to educate. For an example, the first aid aiders, right? They were mental aiders within the organizations. So what do these mental aiders do? Because a lot of times people think, oh, if I have to go and talk to the mental aider within the organization, what happens if he or she has to go and talk to the within the hierarchy, right? So they did not know how it was all dealt in confidence. So a lot of things which were available was made clear to the people manager, and that is something we said we will not do it. We will not have all the people managers in one call for 4 hours and said, and we will say, okay, we are good with the boot camp. No, we will not do that. We said, how is that we will architect the design of this program where we can touch throughout the year, so that we're talking about the well-being of the people with the people managers throughout the year. So that's another part of the design which kicked in as part of the boot camp.
Thank you, Pooja. A very important question comes from Sylvia. Obviously, budget is always a constraint and a challenge. So how do you approach, well, I would say the business case, the return on investment? How do you sell to stakeholders and decision makers about, getting the right funding, the financial investment into well-being strategy? And how do you make sure that funds are available to support you on this important journey?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that was a tough job for me. I think it is so fortunate because when you're working in an organization which truly believes on employees' well-being, as I said, the objective is pretty much laid in 2012, and it's not all in papers, right? They truly wanted to translate and get to the bottom of the organization. So the way that I do is I make it very sure, okay, if you're giving me a well-being portfolio for the year, then the first thing that I do, it could be any portfolio, right? The first thing that I always ensure as an HR leader is, one of the things that I ensure is, do I have the budget? If yes, what is the budget that I could play around with, so that I could bring in some meaningful interventions, right? So that is one of the things that I always look at. If I see, no, this is not an acceptable budget, then I try and at least get a sense from my leadership, what is it, are they flexible, not flexible, so that accordingly I make my plan throughout the year. For an example, the classic thing is, during the COVID, one of the things that I wanted to immediately get is the mobile, the wellness app, because people were not able to go to the hospitals. So I want to ensure at least they have an app where they can actually reach out to the doctors, right? And this app was available in India for a very nominal cost, and this was not budgeted, right? So I have to make a business case and say, if we bring in the app to all employees, what is the cost, and what is that we are already doing which is not making any impact to the employees in the current scenario. So I have to make a business case and then had to get that budget approved. And yeah, it was a tough call, but unless you don't show the value in what you want to bring in, especially as a well-being, then it will not sell well. But yes, well-being, anybody who's playing a well-being role in this call, I think the first thing that is very important for you to understand from your leadership is, what is the appetite, to what extent is things are budgeted already, and to what extent they can stretch. That is a very important decision or a thought process that you have to know as a well-being leader.
Terrific. And of course, when it comes to presenting the business case, let's not forget, always think about the other person, the receiver's point of view, what's value for them. But the value presentation is just so important. Let me just see if there's any more question. Lillian is asking, is it possible to share details what your employee assistant program entails?
Sure. Yeah, so since we are a global organization as Schneider Electric, we have, I'm not sure if I can tell the name of the company. So we have LiveWorks as one of the provider. We used to have Optum as one of the providers. But what is very important is, as a EAP, there is a option called manager support as part of the EAP. So that is something that I always ensure that within the EAP, as a counseling services, the manager support is also completely there. And very importantly, that I enjoy as part of the EAP is the reports that comes out of the reports that come out of this EAP providers. So if you have your EAP provider and if they are able to give you the reports, I think that's been a fantastic tool for me to make some of the policy changes. For example, you saw global family leave, and that basically came in because of the reports that we saw for the last 2 years on how important it is to give the flexibility for people to spend their time with the family, right? And especially Schneider Electric as an organization, we truly believe on mobility. Like, for example, I'm from India, but I've been living in the US, Singapore, UK. So, which means I'm also away from my family, right? I may have my immediate family, but my parents could be somewhere else. So, how do the organization give me time where I could go and spend time with my family? So, This came in as a policy based on my EAP report that we saw for the last 2 years. So if you're part of the well-being and if you're, I'm sure you must be having EAP as your provider. The report is so critical for you to do all your interventions, right? Anything that you do as well-being, please ensure that there is a need from the people and you're doing it. It should never be that you're designing as part of the well-being, but it's actually not enjoyed by the larger population. So yeah, I can talk more, Leanne. If you want more details, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to give you more details, and I'm available in LinkedIn. I'm reachable. Happy and easy to connect and network with people to get deeper into some of these subjects.
Thank you so much, Pooja. I'm sure you will receive countless of invitations. Your LinkedIn invitation box will be very full after this session. It's been very valuable. I really appreciate your time being here with us. We could listen to you for hours more, but unfortunately we need to move on to the last part of our online forum.